This happened a week ago. I'm Jake, 32 years old, and I've always loved nature. I often go camping to escape the crazy hustle of my job. This time, I picked Redwood National Park. The tall trees felt majestic, and I thought I could find some peace there. I had no idea how wrong I was. I set up my camp in a secluded spot. It was quiet, just me and the woods. The first night felt normal. I snapped photos of the trees until sunset. When it got dark, I sat by the fire under the stars. But around midnight, I heard something. It was soft, like footsteps. I shrugged it off as my imagination, but then I heard rustling too. It felt like whispers were coming closer. I tried to relax and rolled into my sleeping bag, but I couldn't sleep. I pulled the bag tight around me and thought about stories I'd heard. People disappearing in the park. The next day, I hiked the trails, hoping to clear my mind. I took photos of the woods and wildlife, but I noticed something odd. Shadowy figures darted between the trees each time I turned my head. I told myself it was just paranoia. Later, I passed some fellow campers, 3 on one trail, 2 on another. I thought it was nice to see others enjoying the park. But when I glanced back, they were gone. I found that strange, but didn't let it bother me. As night came again, I felt uneasy. When I built the fire, I looked around, hoping to see other campers. The only company I had was the shadows at the edge of the clearing. I tried to convince myself everything was fine. Then I heard laughter, high-pitched and echoing through the trees. My heart dropped. The woods went quiet, and I felt the weight of silence pressing down. I thought about running, but I didn't know where I'd go. I stepped closer to the fire, my heart pounding. Then I saw a figure move just behind a tree. I took a step forward, hoping to shine my light and see who it was. My instincts told me to turn back. What if it was nothing? But I had to know. I called out, "Hello?" My voice broke the silence. I directed my flashlight where I saw the movement, but when I reached that spot, it was empty. Just then, I heard it again, closer this time. "Why are you here?" a voice whispered. My stomach twisted in knots. I turned quickly. The woods felt empty, but I knew I couldn't shake the feeling. Something was out there, watching me. The fire crackled loudly, but it couldn't chase away the dread growing inside me. I felt a chill dance along my spine. I wanted to scream, to run, but I stayed frozen. It wasn't just my imagination anymore. Something sinister lurked just beyond the light, waiting for me to make a move. I had to move. The fire offered little comfort, just flickering shadows looming on the trees. The laughter echoed again, but this time it sounded like it was behind me, mocking me. I spun around, breathing heavy, but there was nothing to see, just the darkness swallowing everything. I fumbled for my phone, my hands trembling, but I had no signal. I was completely cut off. My heart raced as panic crept in. I could feel the quiet pressing against my skin, making it hard to breathe. I needed to make sure I wasn't alone here, but the woods felt more menacing than ever. Gathering my courage, I took a deep breath and shouted, "Is anyone out there?" No response, just my own voice bouncing back at me, empty and distant. I felt silly for yelling, but fear had taken hold, and I couldn't shake it off. I checked my watch. It was well past midnight, and I needed a plan. I considered packing my things and getting out of there. But then, a rustle came from the bushes nearby. I froze, every instinct telling me to run, yet I was anchored to the spot. I thought I saw something move, a flash of white out of the corner of my eye. "Hello?" I tried again, softer this time. I stepped towards the noise, focused on breaking the tension in the air. The flicker of the fire illuminated a pathway where shadows darted back and forth. My instincts screamed at me to stop, to retreat, but curiosity held me captive. As I moved into the shadows, I stumbled over a root and fell. The flashlight slipped from my grip, landing with a dull thud amidst the underbrush. Panic surged. I reached for it, desperate to catch the flickering beam before it went out completely. In the dim glow, I caught sight of something half buried beneath the leaves. I bent closer, my heart just about pounding out of my chest. That's when I saw a locket. It glinted oddly in the flashlight's beam. I reached for it, but as my fingers brushed against it, I felt a jolt run through me. The panic expanded. It looked like a regular locket, one that might belong to someone who had loved, who had been loved. But when I flipped it open, I was met with an image of a face I didn't recognize. The scream caught in my throat as I registered the date written on the inside. It was the same day, the same month, but years back, a date listed as a missing persons case. Every instinct told me to put it down, to leave it be, but my hands betrayed me. Suddenly, the laughter came again, shrill and close. My head whipped around, and I was met with a dozen eyes staring back at me from the dark. They were everywhere, lurking just beyond the reach of my light. Then, everything went dark. My flashlight flickered and died, plunging me into an unbearable pitch of black. I scrambled to stand, adrenaline kicking in like a bolt of electricity. I turned in every direction, trying to find my way, but the shadows closed in. I was no longer alone. I could feel their presence all around me, throbbing with anticipation. The realization hit hard. Whatever was lurking in the trees had been waiting for me, and now they were ready to make their move. The silence was deafening. I strained to hear any sound in the dark, my heart beating loud enough to drown out my surroundings. I felt like prey, waiting for something to pounce. I stumbled backward, my hands scrambling for anything solid, anything to ground me. That's when I heard it. A low growl, deep and rumbling, creeping through the air like a thick fog. I froze, terrified of making a sound, unsure where it was coming from. My instincts were screaming for me to run, but my body refused to obey. I reached for my backpack, desperate for my remaining supplies. The locket, the date, what did it all mean? I couldn't think straight with the fear coiling around my throat. I fumbled in the dark, finally finding the comforting shape of my water bottle. But that wasn't enough. I needed light. With a deep breath, I remembered I had a backup flashlight. I pulled it out and flicked it on. A narrow beam cut through the blackness, illuminating patches of dirt and gnarly roots. The growl echoed again, closer this time. My stomach dropped. I swept the light around, searching the trees. I saw nothing at first, but then I caught a glimpse. A silhouette shifting between the trunks, something hunched and large. It had fur, but something about it felt wrong, twisted. Before I could scream, the laughter erupted again. This time, it was jarring, a cacophony of mocking voices crashing into one another. I felt bile rising in my throat. I wanted to bolt, but my legs wouldn't move. My mind raced back to the locket and that date. Had this happened before? Were there others here? And then I noticed the ground. There were too many footprints, dozens of them leading deeper into the woods, directed toward the last spot I wanted to go. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. The prints were half-circular, almost paw-like, but far too large. Whatever had made them was not human. I turned, trying to locate the creature again, but it had vanished. The laughter faded now, replaced by the rustle of leaves. I had never felt so hunted. The panic spiked inside me. Every hair on my body stood on end. I couldn't stay here. The thought surged in my mind, pushing me. I had to find a way out before I became the next missing person. But where do I go? The only path was back to my tent, and it felt like an invitation. So I made a choice. I would follow the prints. Maybe they led to others, perhaps to safety. But as I stepped forward, my foot caught on something, a cord. I bent down to examine it, heart racing again. It was a frayed rope, caked with dirt. Attached to it was a tag, barely legible in the dim light, but I could make out one word. Help! A chill ran down my spine. I turned to run in the opposite direction, but I was met with a pair of glowing eyes staring back at me from the darkness. The sound of heavy breathing echoed, and I knew I had made a grave mistake. Before I could react, the brush parted and something lunged. I barely had time to scream before the creature collided with me. It was massive, its weight sending me crashing to the ground. The flashlight flickered violently, illuminating sharp fangs and matted fur. I thrashed, trying to push it away, but it held me down with an iron grip. I could see more now. Its eyes were a sickly yellow, and they burned with an unnatural hunger. As fear flooded my veins, I felt something cold and wet on my face. I recoiled, realizing it was drool, thick and glistening. With a surge of adrenaline, I swung my arm wildly, catching its snout. It snarled, pulling back slightly, giving me just enough of a chance. I scrambled to my feet, flashlight bouncing erratically in my grip. I didn't stop to look back. I ran. My heart pounded like a drum as I drove my legs to propel me forward. Taking a narrow path, I prayed it led away from whatever nightmare had just attacked me. The laughter echoed again, a chorus that danced through the trees, toyed with my sanity. But I wasn't just running from the creature. I was running from the truth gnawing at my mind. How many had come before me? How many had heard that same laughter? Branches whipped my face as I veered left, desperately seeking cover. It wasn't long before I spotted a cluster of boulders and ducked behind them, trying to catch my breath. I aimed my flashlight at the entrance to a small cave, half hidden by shadows. A live wire of dread shot through me. Would something worse be lurking inside? But where else could I go? Just as I was about to make the decision, a soft shuffle met my ears. I strained to focus the beam of light. It danced across the entrance of the cave, revealing something glimmering at the edge. Metal. I crept closer, the cold stone biting into my palms as I peered inside. A small table sat within, littered with scraps of paper and rusting tools. My heart sank as I recognized one of the papers covered in scrawled handwriting. "The creature stalks the woods. We can't escape." I stumbled back, the realization crashing over me. These were the last words of someone who had been trapped here. And then, a noise, the sound of claws scraping against the rock. I turned, my breath hitching in my throat as I saw the glowing eyes again. This time, they were closer. Something emerged from the shadows, and its shape twisted my stomach into knots. With nowhere to go, the cave behind me could be my only refuge. But just as I reached for the entrance, the creature lunged again, hungry for more than just a chase. In that moment, a thought hit me hard. The date on the locket. It wasn't just a reminder. It might be connected to all of this. But as I faced the creature, I realized that answers were going to cost me. I had to move. There was no time to think. I sprinted into the mouth of the cave, praying the darkness would protect me. But then everything went black. I tumbled into the cave, the darkness swallowing me whole. My flashlight flickered again, casting weak beams that danced against the damp stone walls. I pressed my back against the rock, heart racing. I could still hear the creature's snarls echoing outside. Its breath was heavy, almost like it was stalking me, waiting for a sign of weakness. Desperation clawed at me. I needed a plan. I scanned my surroundings, searching for anything that could help. The table was simpler than it appeared. I moved closer, running my hands along its surface. The papers were mostly illegible, but one caught my eye. It was a map, faded, but the lines were visible enough to follow. It marked a route deep into the woods, a path I hadn't noticed before. Could it lead to safety? I had no idea how far into the forest I actually was. The only way to find out was to stay alive long enough to escape. Then, the faint sound of claws on stone pulled me back to reality. I had to move. I tucked the map under my arm and studied the cave. There seemed to be another tunnel, veiled in shadows that felt like a promise of concealment. I had to take the risk. I squeezed through the narrow gap, forcing my body against the rough wall. My mind raced with thoughts of the creature outside and what it would do if it found me. Panic surged and I pressed on, despite the fear gripping my chest. The tunnel was low and narrow, forcing me to crouch. I squeezed my eyes shut for a moment, trying to summon courage. As I crawled, the air grew colder, a deep chill that made me shiver. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from behind me. I froze, heart thudding against my ribs. I could feel it, not just hear it. The creature was close. I moved again, forcing myself into a crawl. Each scrape of stone against my skin felt like a countdown. In the distance, I saw a faint glimmer of light. It felt like a beacon, drawing me in. Hope surged, but so did dread. What if it wasn't safety? What if it led to something worse? I pushed the thoughts away. Staying here meant certain death. As I got closer to the source of light, I heard another sound, a voice, soft and pleading, like echoes from the past. Help. Please. My heart jolted. I wasn't the only one trapped here. I had to find out who it was, but the decision burned in my gut. The creature could still be behind me. I couldn't risk a confrontation. It was too close. Just as I was about to turn back, I saw the outline of a figure in the light. It was a woman. Her hair was tangled, and her eyes were wide with fear. Then I heard it again, the creature's growl, now mixed with the sounds of something else. Another voice, closer. I was not alone, but neither were we safe. I turned back to the cave, ready to run again, but the path had shifted. I was trapped between the voices and the creature. Just as panic threatened to overtake me, something clicked. The date on my locket was more than just a reminder. It might be the key to everything. But what it all meant, I still didn't know. All I knew was that I was out of time. The air felt alive with tension as I wrestled with my thoughts. I had to decide quickly, but both options were filled with dread. The voice was desperate, and I couldn't just leave someone behind. Yet the creature's growl echoed ominously, a grim reminder of the danger lurking in the shadows. I took a deep breath, forcing my heart to slow down. The woman looked even more terrified now, her eyes darting around as if sensing the approaching threat. "Help me," she croaked, her voice barely above a whisper. Was she friend or foe? As I hesitated, the growl grew louder, more aggressive. I had no more time to waste. I stepped closer, careful to keep an eye on the darkness behind me. "What's your name?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Emily," she answered, her face a mask of desperation. I think it's coming." Just then, a shadow shifted in the corner of the light. My heart raced. "We need to go now!" Without waiting for a response, I grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the glimmering light. The tunnel seemed impossibly long, my legs burning as we crawled. Emily stumbled behind me, dragging her feet. "What's chasing us?" she gasped, breathless. "I don't know," I snapped, forcing myself to focus. The light seemed to flicker as if it was responding to my panic. I could feel the creature's presence, its anger resonating through the walls. We were running out of time. "Over there!" She pointed to a second tunnel branching off the main one. It was darker, but it felt like it could give us more distance from the growl that echoed close behind. "Okay!" I led the way into the narrower passage. As we crawled deeper into the dark, Emily's hand slipped from mine. I turned back just in time to see her stumble and fall. "Emily!" She looked up, panic in her eyes, and then the growl erupted into a deafening roar. I could feel the vibrations in my chest. I grabbed her again, pulling her forward, pushing us both harder into the tunnel. The walls felt like they were closing in, and the air was thick with fear. I needed to distract myself from the terror. The map under my arm started to slip out, and instinctively, I tucked it into my pocket. Suddenly, we rounded a bend and came to a stop. The passage opened up into a small cavern. The light here was different, warmer, flickering. My eyes landed on strange markings covering the walls. They looked ancient, etched deep into the stone. "What is this place?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. I didn't answer. I was too busy examining the drawings. They looked like faces twisted in anguish. My stomach churned. People had been here. But where were they now? Just then, the growl echoed again, now closer, pounding through the cavern. We didn't have a choice. The creature would find us, and we had to move. I grabbed Emily's hand and glanced down the other tunnel. There was no turning back now. "We can't stay here." As we scrambled toward the exit, something glimmered from the corner of my eye. A piece of jewelry, half buried in dirt. It looked just like my locket. I stopped, my breath caught in my throat. Could it really be? I reached down and grabbed it. The cold metal felt familiar. My heart raced at the possibilities, terror mixing with hope. "I need this," I shouted over my shoulder, but I had no idea how to explain it as I turned to flee again. Then I heard the growl transform into something worse, a howl. It pierced the darkness, and my pulse quickened. We were out of time. I pulled Emily down the tunnel, my mind racing. The howl still echoed in my ears, a warning that we were not alone. My grip tightened around her hand as we stumbled deeper into darkness, praying there was an escape somewhere ahead. The air grew colder, a stark contrast to the flickering warmth of the cavern. I glanced back at Emily, whose face was pale, but determination glinted in her eyes. "Why were you in there?" she gasped, struggling to keep up. "I don't know. I found myself in that place," I shouted back, irritation mixing with fear. We rounded another bend, and the passage grew even tighter, rocks scraping my shoulders. "We just need to get out first." Then I saw it, a faint glimmer up ahead. My heart leaped as I sprinted forward. It looked like an exit, light spilling in from somewhere beyond. But as I neared, an ominous shadow flitted past the edges of my vision, and my stomach dropped. "Keep going," I urged Emily, my voice rising in panic. But as we burst into the light, the sight froze me in place. We emerged into a clearing, surrounded by trees. The bright sun filtered through the leaves, but the air felt charged with tension. I barely registered the birds that should have been chirping. I could only focus on what lay before us. A massive figure stood in the distance, expressionless, eyes like black stones locked onto us. "Who? What is that?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling, and I could feel her grip tighten. "I don't know," I breathed, staring ahead. My thoughts were in chaos. The figure was tall and inhuman, looming over the ground like a shadow stretching far too long. As if sensing our presence, it shifted slightly. My instincts kicked in. "We need to hide." I pulled Emily behind a nearby tree, the coarse bark digging into my back. The creature turned its head, and I could feel its gaze scanning the area, hunting, searching. My pulse thundered in my ears. I thought of the locket, of the faces etched in the stone. It didn't feel like coincidence anymore. "Did you see it?" Emily's voice broke through, laced with sharp fear. "It looks like something from my nightmares." I shushed her, eyes darting around. That creature was more than a mere threat. It held secrets, and I was terrified of what it knew. "We can't let it find us. Not now." I glanced back at the path we came from, but a chill ran down my spine. Shadows danced behind the trees, like the remnants of something that had once lived here. That's when I saw something shimmering on the grass, a small metallic object glinting in the sunlight. I squinted to get a better look. It was another piece of jewelry connected to the same nightmares we were escaping. "Emily," I breathed, reaching for it. The moment my fingers brushed against it, a horrifying screech erupted from the creature, shattering the silence of the woods. I jumped back, adrenaline coursing through me like fire. "Run!" I yelled, dragging Emily away from the clearing, back toward the ominous cave. The howl of the creature echoed behind us, a sound that promised we were not alone in our flight. As we raced back into the tunnel, the darkness enveloped us once more, a cold comfort amidst the chaos. But I couldn't shake the feeling. Those markings and the figure knew more than we did. Someone had been here, And it wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. The tunnel was dim and claustrophobic, the echoes of our breaths bouncing off the stone walls. I could still hear the creature's screech shrill in my mind, a constant reminder that danger was closer than I wanted to admit. I pulled Emily along faster, the fear of being caught propelling us forward, deeper into the unseen. "Do you think it's following us?" Emily whispered, her voice barely rising above the sound of our hurried footsteps. "I don't know," I replied, forcing calm into my tone. "But we need to keep moving. There has to be a way out." We turned corner after corner, still running, the darkness pressing down on us. My mind raced with questions. What was that creature? Why did it seem so familiar? As fragments of memories surged into focus, the locket brushed against my chest. I had to find out what it connected to. Suddenly, the rocky path sloped downward, and I stumbled. My foot caught on a loose stone, and I fell forward. "Whoa!" Emily gasped, reaching out to steady me. "Careful!" I grunted, pushing myself back up. Just as I regained my footing, the tunnel abruptly widened. The air changed, feeling fresher, less oppressive. We stepped into a larger chamber filled with strange symbols carved into the walls. It looked ancient, out of place in the natural landscape. "What is this place?" Emily asked, her voice echoing off the stone. "I'm not sure," I said, moving closer to a series of symbols. The designs were intricate, like a story etched in stone. My fingers traced along them, each mark sending a shiver down my spine. Then I noticed something beneath the strange carvings. It was that same metallic sheen, but this time it was encased in the rock. "It's another piece of jewelry," I breathed. Without thinking, I reached for it. The moment I touched the cool metal, the chamber filled with a low hum. The ground vibrated beneath us, and I felt a sudden pull, like the earth was alive. "What did you do?" Emily asked sharply. "I don't know," I stammered, jerking my hand back, but it was too late. The symbols glowed, illuminating the room in an eerie light. A sensation of dread washed over me. Whatever was hidden here was not meant to be disturbed. Suddenly, a shadow appeared at the entrance we had just come through. The silhouette was unmistakable. "It's back!" I shouted. The creature stood there, its eyes glinting with an otherworldly curiosity. "We need to hide," I urged, searching for a place. In my peripheral vision, I saw a narrow slit in the rock. Without thinking, I shoved Emily toward it. "In there! Hurry!" We squeezed into the gap just as the creature stepped fully into the chamber. Its face was monstrous, but there was a strange intelligence behind its black eyes. I held my breath, frozen in place, praying it wouldn't find us. I could hear its heavy breathing, and I felt Emily beside me, trembling. "What happens if it sees us?" she whispered, her face pale against the stone. "Then we'll find out just how fast we can run," I murmured back, peering through the narrow opening. But then the creature paused, tilting its head as if listening for something. Fear coiled in my stomach, and I cursed under my breath. We had uncovered something we didn't understand, and now it was too late to turn back. As it moved closer to the symbols, everything crashed in on me, a horrifying realization disguised behind the growing fear. This place was more than a cave. This was a trap, a keep for dreadful secrets. I turned to Emily, thoughts racing. If it finds us, we won't get out of here alive. Just as that fear settled, the creature reached out a clawed hand toward the glowing symbols. And then the walls began to tremble. The trembling intensified, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. I pressed myself against the rock, urging Emily to do the same. The creature, fixated on the symbols, didn't seem to notice our presence yet. The hum grew louder, vibrating through my entire body, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we had awakened something ancient. "Do you think it will hurt us?" Emily whispered again, her voice quivering. "I don't know. But if it's drawn to those symbols, then we might have to use that to our advantage," I replied quietly. My mind raced. What if the creature guarding this chamber was trying to protect something? or perhaps it was bound to the symbols. Suddenly the creature's fingers touched the glowing design, and the walls shuddered once more, this time with a rhythmic pulsing. Light erupted from the symbols, casting eerie shadows that danced around the chamber. In a panic, I glanced outside our hiding spot, my heart sinking as I realized we might be trapped. Then, a burst of energy surged from the symbols, creating a shockwave that knocked both Emily and me backward against the chamber wall. The creature staggered forward, its eyes widening as it absorbed the light radiating from the symbols. I saw a glint of something behind it, a dark portal emerging from the stone, swirling and beckoning. "What is that?" Emily gasped, her eyes wide with fear and wonder. "It looks like some kind of gateway," I replied. But before I could finish my thought, the creature turned toward us, its gaze locking onto mine. There was an intensity in its eyes, a recognition. My stomach dropped. It opened its mouth, revealing sharp, elongated teeth. A low growl reverberated through the chamber. I held my breath, realizing the creature could see us. It wasn't purely a beast. There was intelligence there, an understanding of the symbols, and that understanding connected to me somehow. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Emily's arm as I turned to sprint toward the opposite side of the chamber. We dashed toward the swirling portal, our only hope of escape. We reached the edge, and I hesitated. Would this gateway take us away from the creature, or deeper into whatever secret lay beyond? The growl of the creature echoed behind us, urging me on. I took Emily's hand. "We have to jump." With a deep breath, we leaped into the unknown. The world around us twisted, and gravity seemed to vanish. A rush of colors blurred my vision, and just as quickly as it began, everything stopped. We landed on a cold, hard floor. Dazed and gasping, I looked around. We were no longer in the chamber. Instead, we found ourselves in a dimly lit room that felt more like a lab. Strange equipment filled the space. "Where are we?" Emily shouted, her voice bouncing off the walls. I squinted at a flickering screen nearby. A series of photos displayed, each showing blurred faces of people from news articles about disappearances in the park. My heart raced as I studied the images. But that wasn't all. Among the faces, I recognized one. It was a picture of me, taken years ago, and that's when everything clicked. The symbols, the creature, the people missing. These weren't coincidences. This place, this trap, it connected us all somehow. "Emily, we have to find a way back," I said, a cold realization creeping in. "This isn't just about us anymore." Then suddenly, a noise echoed through the hall, vibrating through my bones. It sounded like footsteps, and they were getting closer. I stood frozen, disbelief washing over me as the footsteps echoed closer. The lab felt smaller somehow, a claustrophobic prison instead of a refuge. "We need to hide," I whispered urgently. Emily and I ducked behind a bank of equipment, forcing ourselves into the shadows as the footfalls drew near. I could see the flickering screen still illuminating us from afar, casting a ghostly light against the walls. My heart raced in my chest, fear coiling tightly in my gut. Through the narrow gap, I caught a glimpse of the figure approaching, a stark silhouette moving with purpose. Adrenaline kicked in as I silently cursed the vulnerability of our position. Whatever was coming had to be stopped. The door swung open just as I held my breath, and an unexpected figure stepped inside. It was a man, grizzled, with eyes shadowed beneath a weathered hat. "Damn it, not again," he muttered, flicking a switch near the door that sent the lights on overhead buzzing to life. Before I could process the man's presence, he turned toward a table cluttered with bizarre relics and tools. My mind raced for explanations. Was this a hunter? A scientist? And what connection did he have to whatever lay beyond this lab? I glanced over at Emily, her expression mirroring my confusion. The grizzled man grumbled to himself, talking about containment and the latest disappearance. "The symbols must be cleared," he said, pacing the room agitatedly. I leaned forward slightly, compelled to listen. "This keeps happening," he continued, his voice low. "We can't let it happen again." "Excuse me," I ventured carefully, poking my head out from behind the equipment. The man startled and whipped around, his expression shifting from annoyance to shock as he took us in. "Are you two from the outside?" His voice was sharp, but his eyes softened. "You need to get out of here. You don't know what you're meddling with." I blinked. What happened back there?" I gestured towards the door, the rumbles of the creature still echoing faintly in my ears. "What's going on?" He sighed deeply, surveying both of us. "You're lucky to be alive. Whatever you found, it's connected to the forest and the things that lurk within. You're not the first to stumble in here, and you certainly won't be the last." That just raised even more questions. "What do you mean?" Emily asked, tension thick in her voice. He rubbed his temples. "There are forces that shouldn't be disturbed, creatures bound to ancient symbols. They were drawn to you, to those pieces of jewelry you found, and they will always hunt for the next ones. If you're here and you still have the locket, you might be wrapped up in their fate." "Fate?" I echoed. "You think we have some sort of destiny here?" "You're entwined with the others, trapped by the same force," he said, looking intently at my locket. "They were pulled into the woods like moths to a flame, but you escaped, barely. It could have been you screaming out there, another story of the lost. But let me warn you, not all who enter will get a second chance." The implications rattled me as I thought back to the darkness, the depths of the woods, and the creature that had hunted us. Then how do we break this? How do we stop it? "I've tried," he admitted, bitterness pooling at the corners of his mouth. "But the symbols are a tether to them. The only way to truly escape is—" Before he could finish, a violent rumble shook the lab, and the lights flickered precariously. My heart sank as I glanced nervously toward the doorway, where shadows twisted just beyond, a reminder of the impending threat. "I can't hold them back," the man said, fear edging into his voice. "The connection is stronger now that you're here." "What does that mean?" I reached out, desperate for clarity, trying to make sense of it all. "Let the locket go," he urged, urgency filling his gaze. "You have to destroy it. It'll sever the link. The only risk is—" "Risk?" I shouted, trying to comprehend what he was saying while the door creaked ominously behind him. "What kind of risk?" But his answer was cut short by a crashing sound outside. The creature had returned, its banging filling the air, a monstrous reminder of our reality. "There's no time," he stated, shoving Emily and me toward the far wall. "Go! You must find the symbols and cleanse them. You're the only hope of breaking the curse." "What? We can't just leave you," Emily protested, but I felt the urgency. "Now!" he shouted, focused on the door where shadows blurred yet again, gathering strength to burst in. With a glance at Emily, we exchanged a silent agreement. The unknowns of the lab now seemed tame compared to the horror lurking outside. I nodded, pushing myself away from the wall, and together we ran without looking back, the man's frantic shouts fading behind us. We needed the symbols. We needed to find them, but they were scattered through the woods, just waiting for another chance to ensnare the unwary. This was not done, and the truth lingered in our wake as we sped toward the darkness. As we ran, I remembered the flicker of the portal, how it pulled us back through time and space. Whatever reality had tethered us and the creature, we had to shatter it, or we would become part of its story, lost among the shadows forever. And yet, as we sprinted into the depths of the woods, uncertainty weighed heavily upon me. Would breaking the curse unleash something darker? I couldn't shake the relentless feeling that this would only be the beginning. Needles of fear dripped through my body as the shadows closed in.